Welcome to Philly Coco Presents Side Project Spotlight, episode 37. This is a developer's journey to making cool stuff. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Coco Heads community focused on Apple development that primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, and watchOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own developer journey.
Indeed.
Ooh,
and I think today's episode is going to be a good one for that.
Oh, yeah?
But you got to stick around to the end because we have a big announcement at the end.
We do have a big announcement, so if you fall asleep, we're sorry. You can cut to the end part then. Definitely do not skip the end part. But let's start with the boring part. No, just kidding. Our little side project, our PickleJar to-do list app.
We got to come up with a better name for that at some point.
We do. I feel like we call it, like we stuck with PickleJar because that was what we defaulted it to. That's what we named the project.
But as a previous episode, as I explained, we moved so far away from that as the actual concept.
Yeah,
because it's a real concept of like to-do management.
Right,
but now it's a new icon.
Yeah, we need a new icon than the hand-drawn thing that Kotaro made in like 5 minutes on his iPad. Actually, I think what we're going to do is we're going to keep that. No, we're going to keep that icon as one of the ones you can select as like a bonus.
Oh,
because it's great.
You know what would be hilarious, but completely useless, horrible idea. This falls in the category of bad ideas. That's
all we have here.
That's true. Is to have like all the icons that we've like cycled through and progressed from like that crappy PickleJar icon to something like eventually we'll keep all the old icons, right? That you can be allowed to select as like an option as your default app icon.
Yeah.
I think should the app continue once it's released, we should just keep releasing like new app icons that didn't make the cut or whatever, and just anytime we update the icon, we just put that old icon in the icon drawer.
We'll have a sticker pack.
Yes.
Out of that. There you go. We
can
finally launch a sticker pack.
Or I don't even know what you would call it. It'd just be like horrible icon sticker pack or something. I don't know. Get a
beta
history.
Icons. A sticker
beta
pack.
Icons. I mean, you can't call the iMessage to anything different. So it'd have to still be whatever we call this app.
Yeah, whatever the app name, sticker pack, and it just has these completely random looking icons,
app icons.
It's like, okay. I just want to send that to my friend now. I want to send the weird hand-drawn pickle to my friend.
It'd be like completely useless. I mean, honestly, like I can't think of any.
Look, the whole app is probably going to be completely useless.
Well,
for most
Steve,
people.
Please explain to any user that might be new to this podcast what this side project actually is.
Besides just a way for us to learn new things, especially like me, because I was the farthest behind in the Swift UI-ness.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, yeah. But I'm catching up, and core data and stuff, yeah. So besides that, which is the main point about it, this is the learning, is the app itself is supposed to be more of a, I guess, kind of a habit tracker is what we're describing it as, because the idea was to have longer term or larger goals that you want to accomplish, and that you want to work on them on like a repeatable pattern, like you might on a software project, like in a sprint, or work on it every Wednesday or something. And then this app just is an easy way for you to kind of track these long-term goals and log your progress on them so that you can see how you did. So, for instance, after a couple of weeks, if you have like an exercise program you put in here, and you say, I want to do 25 push-ups, you log how many you did, every Wednesday, and then after 2 weeks, you see if you made progress. Very simple. Something you probably could write in a weekend, but we are just going to make sure it takes as long as possible. because that way it's content.
We have lives, unfortunately.
Because it's a learning app. So because it's that we're basically only working on this in for like a handful of hours a week.
Yeah,
unfortunately. So it's slow going, but I feel like it's speeding up a little bit because I'm just finding some big chunks of time to just sit there and start banging on stuff, and then I hit some obstacle, and then so it doesn't really get finished, but I make a lot of progress, and I come back later and I've learned a lot, so I could be a little faster next time.
So what progress have you made this past 2 weeks? This sprint, quote unquote.
Yeah, well, I was trying to get the log screen done, and I only got part of it done. And I was working off of your sketch design and the existing UI elements that you provided. Like there was like a goal chip, I think you call it, I was using in there, which is a little broken. I only sort of fixed it enough to make it work for while I was doing my screen. But there's the log screen is kind of a big, complicated screen. We even have it marked in our issue list on GitHub as a pretty big project. So I didn't expect to get it all done. But I was working on it. I ran into some problems, mostly around just figuring out the proper techniques for managing and passing around the state with a Swift UI. Because I was trying to, I have to build. There's like a horizontal piece, which is like works like a list, but that's not a thing that's built in. So it's more like I use a scroll view and like a tap gesture and stuff. And so I ran into a couple of things. One was the tooling, where things like the tap gesture inside a scroll view apparently just doesn't seem to work in previews, or it doesn't like I could never verify that it was working. And so I thought it was just broken for a long time until I actually ran it in the simulator, because I actually don't run things in the simulator unless I have to. Because it's a lot faster for me to just keep working on previews. But and then I realized that all my stuff was actually working, like my bindings were working and the closure thing was working, but I didn't know. So that was one thing. The other thing was just figuring out how to do it.
It depends. I wonder if it's because maybe you haven't passed your environment objects into a preview.
No, I'm definitely doing that. I've been setting up my previews. Actually mostly with like a little container, object, little container struct, and I set up like the environment, I set up like a fetch request and everything in there. So and it uses our preview view context that has demo data in it. And actually it might help us just to make, as a side, make more than one of those static functions, so that maybe it can just have the slice of data we need instead of having it produce one giant database.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, especially because I would like it. I just have time. This is one of the things I just don't have time to do that yet. But I'm gonna add one there because what I wanted was fewer items. It was like for that screen I was working on. But there was one issue. Issues of just figuring out like how do I find out if you tap something, like because I'm separating all the views and doing things in kind of a clean way. So I'm like, okay, well now I'm on a screen and I have this scroll view, this H stack, and I have these views in it, and I'm like passing in the data, and then I want to know which goal you've selected. How do I tell the container view like which goal you selected? Like what's the mechanism for that? Because I start with a core data fetch results, which is like this random access collection thing, and and it's like and so it's not like an array or something. And I'm passing in like one goal, into each one of those little, I'm going through a for each and rendering each one of those little views. And so I have to pass in the data for the view. And then it's like, how do I get back? You tapped it. So I put the tap gesture on the sub view, like on the little chip, view. And then I pass in a closure, which then sets the goal in there, so it passes back the goal you selected that way. You can communicate back up to the containing view. I don't know if that's the best way of doing it. I was like, is there like a built-in way that makes more sense, or something with bindings? But I couldn't figure it out. So I did that, and that worked. It gives you the goal. I mean, I haven't checked to see if it's like a memory leak or something, because it's like working with the core data objects is a little bit weird. And then one of the things that was weird about it was if you run through a for each loop, and I think your preview data looks like it's being made in order, right? And then my fetch request for the goals has a sort descriptor on it. It's supposed to be sorting things by creation date ascending, and everything's getting timestamped. But for some reason, when you go through the for each, it just is all out of order. And I'm thinking, is that maybe because it's a random access collection? I have to do something else to get the for each to work right, or because I didn't want to. I'm really trying not to take the core data like collection and turn it into an array or something, because then I disconnect it from the fetch results. Because then it's like a copy of the stuff, and I really want to not do that unless it makes sense to do it. Because if I sometimes I want things to the UI to update depending on what you're doing, or if something changes elsewhere. Like if you added a goal or something, I would love it to just update fetch results, because that's kind of like the Swift UI way, the source of truth updates, and so does your UI. So anyway, the core data stuff continues to add like a wrinkle. It's just a little bit more friction to use it. You know what I mean? But have you is there like something I'm doing wrong? Do you know if I have a core data fetch results, it's a collection of results, and I go through a for each, is it inherently going to be out of order because of the type of collection it is?
I mean, it shouldn't be out of order if you applied a sort descriptor on it.
That's what I thought, but the type that you get back is like a random access collection. But I don't know. I didn't look at details about what protocols that implements. If you can still go through it in order or not.
Right. Yeah, I guess I would have to. I guess this might be a little bit more broad. Normally, the conversation would be like, let me see how it looks. Let's share the screen and then review it, and then maybe we can all Google the hell out of it, and then
although we don't want to
figure it out together. So, but we don't want to do that here
on the podcast. But anyway, that was like a minor thing, and then I was trying to use I used a binding for something. I had to pass in a binding. So I mean, it was mostly just also I was factoring everything into separate views. I'm using like a container view pattern for this. So I have like a view that's called a screen, called like the goal screen, or no, log screen, and then that is what gets the fetch results, gets all the data, passes it in the subviews, and that seems to be working pretty well. So I had to separate everything out, and I just had some basic issues with getting the separation to work at first, and sometimes figuring out function signatures for things. It just things are just a little bit different than I'm used to.
I think the one thing, and I remember for Swift UI, it's kind of bizarre to think about it, but if you're coming from UI Kit, it took me about a year when Swift UI first came out to really even feel comfortable thinking in that pattern. Like I think if you came from like React Native or Flutter or that kind of like background, the learning curve would not be as dramatic in terms of like getting because I feel like I've heard this in other podcasts, whether it be Marco or Manton or any of the more like people who are very experienced in the UI Kit world, where they would just for maybe 2 or 3 months they would just express their undying displeasure with Swift UI, and then something snaps, like something switches. It's pretty funny because like something switches mid, like somewhere in that like this learning process. And all of a sudden, they're like, "This is amazing."
Yeah, I think the issue is you have to. It takes a while to grasp all the different abstractions and how they work together in Swift UI. And so I've been doing a lot of research and rewatching videos and screencast stuff. And we're going to talk about that in our main topic today about how to learn things. And I've been doing that because I think that's what it is. I think you it's like the switch is partway switch for me. But because so much of my normal work for so many years has been like it's been UI Kit and it's been other languages that don't work like this, or other frameworks and stuff don't work like this. I think that might be exactly it. It's just a matter of trying to just think the right way so you can build the right abstractions.
I mean, you normally think you think in so many, like either you think in a lot of protocols or delegates, and a lot of these patterns that you're like in your toolkit, and it's like, okay, do I do notifications? Do I need to do notifications here? If I need to know where like this particular, I need this view to know, and this view is like in like some other branch of the hierarchy that's like way not in the parent view, but in like the sister view or something like that.
You know what it is? I think in Objective-C land anyway, UI Kit, I thought all the time about sending messages between objects. And in Swift UI and in Swift in general, I don't know, that just doesn't feel right, even though I know it's not, I don't think it's implemented the same way as Objective-C, but it just doesn't feel like that's what I'm doing. And so I'm trying to think the way that Swift UI wants me to think. It feels to me like in like the feeling in my head is like the things are kind of glued together in different ways instead of feeling like they're all just these disconnected things I'm sending messages between. I think some of that has to do with the language, where in Objective-C, I'm just so used to not caring about things being nil too much. It's like, you know, not going to crash. And here it's like everything has to be unwrapped all the freaking time. And he's like, like that adds to it.
Well, the thing is, like, in many ways, anything with like a bang or an unwrap or something of that, or nil in general, right? Or optionals are always like, ooh, you got to be a little bit, you got to side eye that a little bit. And so those are the things you're cautious about in Swift and Swift UI by extension.
Yeah. So it's like, what I'm trying to explain is I think, as you said, that switch hasn't fully flipped yet. So it's not even just that I have a mental model, which is in flux, but I have like this kind of like intuition, or it's an emotional kind of level intuition that doesn't match what I need to do. And so you end up going down the wrong path a lot.
And to be fair, core data isn't helping.
No, core data. No, actually, I thought about this. So if we had just not done that and just did things with like structs, it actually would have been simpler in areas because it wouldn't have had some of these weirdness to it. But it's fine. I mean, the advantage of it is, we get other advantages from it, and it's not that bad or anything. It's just
that's the sad part.
It's actually much easier than it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, like if you compare core data, like setting up and implementing core data with the core data stack and the whole and everything, right? And then just the setup alone was like wordy and obnoxious, and then doing the fetch requests and all that, and doing all that setup, and then bringing back the data source, and then doing it that way. That was.
So long story short, I have a screen where you can look at the goals, rendered in a little chip horizontally, and then below that you have a little picker. You can pick between calendar and list. I don't have a calendar built, but I have a very, very rudimentary list. And I think the thing that doesn't work, I have to figure out how to do is I have to do a list and then go to a detail screen, I guess, from that list. But I have I have the information from the log in there. It's not like complete. We probably need to refactor the model to, I think we might want to add more data or something in there. But anyway, I got that list working. So you could pick a goal and it'll update. All the UI is a little janky still. Like it doesn't show that you've selected a goal or something like in the UI. That has to be done. But it works. It actually works. It's communicating between the views properly, between the source of truth. Everything so far seems like it's working. And I got that done last night in a few hours. I did that part in a few hours. And I did a bunch of refactoring. So I also tried to make it an example of, I'm trying to develop a style of writing this stuff. And I was kind of intentionally trying to do that last night, where I was trying to make it so that everything was self-contained in a function or a view, and I was trying to name things in an appropriate way. So I actually just spent a lot of time refactoring that and thinking it through as I was doing that last night, so that the actual view itself is very short and it just has like 3 other views in it and a spacer. Like everything is contained in there, and I want my Swift UI to be like that. I don't want this giant indentation soup that you can get easily with Swift UI. And I also find that the refactoring tools in Xcode are still so weak that sometimes I found it was just easier to I would try to build something in there and then refactor it out. But sometimes that was actually really problematic because it was like the refactoring tools wouldn't work. So you had to basically just copy and paste and manually create files and stuff. And it just slows you down. I wish they would add put more time into getting the refactoring tools working better in Xcode.
Yeah, I mean, there are weird, I guess there are tricks of the trade with how you navigate through your editor and you slice and dice in your code, but they're not upfront about it. So you kind of have to you get into these look, some guy on Twitter goes, hey, look how amazing this idea is. I'm like, wait, I didn't even know that was there, and I've been doing this for how long?
Yeah, if you do Java, C#, that kind of stuff, enterprise stuff using Visual Studio and whatever Clips and whatever these other editors, the kind of high level, and you install some third party tools, you can get some really advanced refactoring tools, and they've been there and been part of normal development practices for 20 years or whatever. So that it's so rudimentary in Xcode is kind of disappointing. I just want to select some stuff and be turn this into a view. or something, and it's like it doesn't do it. Sometimes it lets you do that kind of thing, and sometimes you can't trigger it. It doesn't work. It doesn't know how to look at what you do. It's just frustrating because because then you have to spend time. You're trying to get your code factored properly because it helps you to think about it, helps you to read it, helps you to manage it later, manage all this complexity. But then you got to stop and jump through all these motions of like, okay, now I have to do file new and a Swift UI and the Swift UI view, and I have to name it, and I have to put it in the right place, and I have to copy this code, put it here, and then everything's now broken, and now I got to rehook everything up again, and then often this stupid Xcode will just stop parsing things properly, it'll just stop. It'll just give you errors that don't exist anymore, and you have to clear the errors. Oh my god, so frustrating.
It's hilarious. Like, I love the editor in Swift Playgrounds.
Yes, that's great.
Amazing in terms of a code completion, in terms of hints, and it's instant. It's so instant. And then, but sometimes it'll bleep the can. It'll just not work anymore, and you're just left hanging what am I doing? So you basically have to kill the app and then restart it again, and you're just oh man.
I have the amazing app by Curtis, SimGenie.
Mm-hmm.
So I am always using trash drive data and reset SwiftUI previews because it's stuff will just break. I have no idea what's wrong. I'm just going to delete everything and restart Xcode again, and it usually fixes it. Which
Shout
is, I know,
out to
overkill.
you, Curtis.
Yes, thank you for this.
.com. I haven't said that in so long. What am I thinking? That's the classic trope. If you've known me for long enough.
But anyway, that's where we are, and so I think that's about it for the updates, right? You guys don't have anything, right?
No,
too much.
Aaron, you can.
Not really. Not really.
I think for me, if I had an excuse, which is not an excuse, it's just basically I don't know if you have had those moments where you're just I think I have this block, and I know it's not anything rational. It's just a block, and it
all the time.
Wait, you saying Culture has it all the time, or you also share that?
I have it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. That's why I looked at a list of stuff, and I was like, okay, we have this screen I want to do. So I just said, okay, and then I looked at your sketch. Thankfully, you had that sketch because it gave me something to start with. I said, okay, here's my sketch. Yeah. Here's the parts of the screen. What is this? What do I have that I can work with? And I just started breaking it down and working piece by piece, solving problems as I went until I built up something that kind of worked. And there you go.
I think it for me, it would have to be the same way. I just recall in this sort of anytime I've had these blocks in my past of trying to write code, it's just one of those things where you have to sort of I personally, I can't speak to anybody else. This is just me. Just sit down, maybe spend a night, just focus, not turn off all my all my other distractions.
Yep.
No 2-monitor, no 3-monitor BS. Just
I did that. I did the exact thing. I actually sat in my living room, my really uncomfortable chair. My butt was really in pain after this session was over for several hours with just my laptop, just a laptop. Yeah. And that's actually, ironically, something I could not do before I had the 16-inch screen because the screen wasn't big enough. But the 16-inch laptop is just big enough, especially with SwiftUI, to do this for me, so I could sit comfortably and still see it. I literally did exactly what you just said. So I guess you and I are on the same wavelength about this. That's how I got over the block.
Because it's and for me, it's not even no music.
Yep, I had nothing.
No, nothing.
I was just typing. It was just me and the wind rattling the windows once in a while.
Yeah, just I need a night just of that. I mean, there's no excuse because I have plenty of nights for it. It's just one time, just commit a night and just. It was
very enjoyable. I gotta tell you, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I left that coding session. I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't fully work, but wow, I feel satisfied.
Yeah, it's like a zone, right? It's just
I felt great afterwards. I actually couldn't sleep, and part of it was that. Part of it was probably having too much caffeine, but part of it was just being jazzed. I was like, oh, I made progress. I learned more about I figured some stuff out in SwiftUI that I wasn't sure about.
You untied that knot.
Yeah, and I learned.
One of the things that I also think, you learned. I guess one of the things that I recall trying to do in other projects, actually that kind of helped us really bizarrely was they tell you that and you think it's like some kind of like hand wavy BS, like some kind of guru would teach you this kind of stuff and be like, yeah, it totally works. It's like, that's not science. That doesn't make sense. But I would think of the problem before I go to sleep, and I would deeply think about it of like, why is that not? What am I doing wrong, right? And then just just think about it. It's like, what is the thing that I'm wanting it to do, and where am I missing the point? And just it doesn't necessarily mean like I have the answers, but by the morning time, it's fresh in my brain to like, oh, I have a plan of attack.
Yeah, I'm thinking that way about how do you build a like a HTTP API client stack like nowadays the modern way with async await and everything, because I actually want to build it in like two parts. I want like a generic level layer that I can put into a Swift package manager and share or just have there, and then I want to have like clients that I can customize because I have different APIs I'm probably going to need to connect to, or different like quirkiness to the data structures and stuff. So I was just like, how do you do it? I did that. I was like thinking about it, at night, and I haven't really gotten it working yet. But I'm like trying to figure out what the patterns are for that. It's all very different now. I mean, in Swift and also in with async await, and then people have different opinions about it. I've been reading lots of different examples.
And what's tough about it is like sometimes there's just like at some point. I mean, deadlines are the mother of all necessity, or mother of all inventions, or whatever the term is. But basically, it's like this idea where it's like, oh, now I'm like, I got no choice. I have to focus on getting this out.
I'm kind of at that, but it's that's what I'm trying to like. What can I build that works, and then iterate on it? And there's only a few. There's like a few things I need to know, like how do I do the authentication mechanism I want to do, or that I'm going to need to do. Yeah. And that is a little bit in flux because there's like some things in 16.4 that might be applicable, but the documentation sucks, so it's not really clear to me. And then and there's like the current technique that I think I know how to work. And so there's like a couple things. There's like that, and then there's like just a couple things I need to figure out how to do. But it's essentially I just need to make like a little abstraction over URL session. I've done it before, but
it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. I mean,
no, it does. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Sometimes I like when it's like figuring out a way to get into that mode, that zone,
exactly,
if they say, and then just like commit to a path, right? And maybe there's a happy path, and then if you're smart about it, you refactor, or if you're Uncle Bob, maybe you will actually write a test beforehand. then you write.
It's red green refactor.
Red green refactor, right? So you write the test, you write the happy path, and then you write
just enough code to make the test green. Then you refactor everything.
Yes.
Then you go to the next thing.
Yes. So I mean, you could do that, or you can. I guess in that sense, like the other the sort of, for me at least, it's just more like I think I've always been much more of a kinesthetic learner, more of somebody that will learn more by doing than necessarily by reading or watching other people do the videos or reading as many articles. Yeah, so I will read it to a point, and then I'll just be like, okay, let me just try a few things, and then eventually I'll get it to happy path, and then I'll go, all right, how do I put my little spin on it? What's comfortable for me? Like what's working for me for this project, and then I'll just sort of like architect that out. That's a horrible idea, by the way.
So like what we've been talking about for a little while here is kind of the topic of the main thrust of this episode, which is about like effective ways to learn new stuff, and especially in software development, but maybe a little bit more broadly as well. But so we've already talked about some of that stuff in this last thing, but I think we wanted to look at it a little bit systematically, right? So we had some stuff here in the notes about one that maybe provide what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and then maybe some resources.
Sure. I mean, like, I guess you can kind of go. I think we've kind of first discussed this idea. I mean, one of the topics in the beginning of our list is like, where do we go for what books do we read? What podcasts? Where do we learn? What because post
where do we get
college,
where do we get the information from?
Yeah,
where does it come from?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, I started learning through Ray. A good chunk was through Ray Winderlich, just in general for iOS development. Obviously, the WWDC videos and Stack Overflow out of the Swazoo were like the core. And then what was that one? I forgot the name of the company. Was it Big Nerd Ranch?
Yeah, that was one of them.
They were the first to actually come up with like a Cocoa book that I actually liked. Like this isn't even pre-iOS. This was like Cocoa, the language.
Oh yeah. So books. Yes. Books are one big option that exist. Mm-hmm. So you do read books?
I did.
You did, but no more. You're done with books. You're dead, you know?
No. Well, the thing is, like, I'll read a lot of articles.
Okay.
So again, goes back to like a lot of Medium articles, whether it be
Medium wants me to log in all the time now, and that's why I haven't read half of the Medium articles I find because of that. Out of principle,
that's true. Like the ones that are not Medium, so like Swift by Sendell,
great site. Swift by Sendell,
Hacking with Swift. Usually Hacking Swift I treat much more of like it's almost like my now modern I wouldn't say Stack Overflow, but it's my modern, like if I have like a little snippet of like how is that little piece of Swift tech, how is that implemented again? I don't need I don't need a long article. I just need like one code snippet. I'll refer to that. I used to, when Swift UI first came out, designcode.ai.
Or IO, is it?
Or IO. Sorry, yeah. IO.ai. God, I got AI on the brain.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a really good beginner site for, so basically it's a lot of short bite-sized videos for a lot of different tech, but what I think its claim to fame was with Swift, and particularly with Swift UI.
Right. So Design Code also had just tech stuff too.
Yeah, they had a really nice one that I really wish I had like paid more attention to, like Vue.js, React Native, Flutter, Unity.
But I mean, they have like articles and videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah. That was...
I think what's interesting is I do both. I think there's kind of a place for books and a place for articles stuff. The articles are going to be potentially more up to date and potentially more focused, but you need to evaluate them. Like you need to evaluate all your sources, but you can find a lot of articles that are terrible, like have terrible advice. But mostly the big problem is you're going to find articles that are from all different dates in time. Yeah. So you really got to check when they were published because the standards have changed. Like even it was like, for instance, like I was saying about the API design, like or HTTP client design, that's changed a lot in the last few years because once async await was available, you write things completely differently than you did before.
Our boy Kenny just ran into that issue. I met up with him just recently and for some ramen. Shout out to you, Kenny, if you're listening.
Nice. No one invited me to ramen.
Oh goodness, you're always remote.
I know. I did find some ramen near me. That was pretty good.
Oh, all right. We'll have to talk later. But he was talking about like we were talking about like, is it a good idea to have your API keys in the code? And I was like, no,
never. Like that's like no.
And I don't want to embarrass him that way, but he was like, okay, well, what do I do? And it was like, okay, well, here is
to put it on your server, and your server has to give you the keys.
Yeah,
it's like,
but it's like the one like in between approach
would be a proxy server.
Right. At least the first step would be put it into the XC config file, but never.
If you absolutely can't remove it from the code, then there's some things you can do to obfuscate it and stuff. But you got to assume that those keys are now toast. Like you're gonna have you really. I mean, we're not gonna get the whole thing about how to design that kind of stuff, but
sure.
But that's there's you're talking about in person.
Yes.
Advice now.
Right. And so like the other thing too is like then like if we were being like super serious, I mean if this is much more like an indie project, it's not as like a big of an issue in my mind. But the challenge was like, okay, this one technique to access an XC config file didn't work based on this article. The article was like 2020, but like Apple had changed it so you didn't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
So Yeah, it's like, oh, that's what I remembered from a while back, but that's changed, and it's only been 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I think books though are great when you, especially for higher level conceptual stuff. I think it can be very useful to have a really good reference to a language or to a framework. Especially true if it's like a really specific framework. Like probably having an entire book on metal would be a good idea if you're trying to do metal stuff. Get one of the good, well reviewed books on that. But as I say, like the books that are specifically on a technology are useful if you know nothing, or if you and they can be useful anytime. But they're especially useful if you really know nothing, because they can give you a systematic, broad a view of everything, so you can help you to better integrate the different concepts involved. But I think they're really valuable when you're reading stuff that's about more evergreen topics in software engineering. So like that's why I read a bunch of stuff like that over the years about more like software design in general.
I think it's funny because like a lot of my references are like when I read technical books. I used to do this thing. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for it. I mean, I don't know if this was common, but I used to. You remember Borders? I don't know.
Bookstore?
The bookstore. They used to have. They always like Barnes and Noble of today. They had a cafe, right?
Yeah.
And I used to, but it was Borders back then, and I used to go to Borders every Sunday from like 3 to 6. And I used to, you could tell I was single back then, but I had no life. But
3 hours,
3 hours on a Sunday, and I would take any books that were of interest to me. Speaking of learning, this was when bookstores were a thing.
Yeah, I did this with Barnes and Noble. Same thing,
because they had like a whole big, huge like section of like up to date technical books, so you can if you want to learn about Java or JavaScript or modern UI design, mobile development, whatever, like and all I did was pay for like coffee and like a croissant or like a bagel or something. Like that would be like,
indeed,
okay, this is my contribution.
No, you're right. And I mean I read the original C book, the C language book.
I mean, even if you knew you weren't really gonna do anything, you were just curious about like the language itself.
Yeah, there's a bunch of books that are essentially classics that you can glean useful insights from whenever you read them in your career, and as well as just helping you understand the historical context, the evolution of the the industry and the techniques and building blocks we use. But then I think there's other books which are like more about, they may use specific languages and stuff to implement them, but they're about a different concept. Like they're about maybe design patterns, or they're about distributed systems, or they're about machine learning or something. And they may, but they're not necessarily about machine learning with Apple's frameworks.
Yeah.
And like you can use both. You can use one to understand the broad concepts, and then the other one to understand more civics. And I think books are really useful because they have to go through more of unless they're like self-published, but they have to go through more of a process to they're more of a coherent whole. We've used that core data book by Walls, I think.
Book.
That's a great
That's a great book.
The one that I recommended, or there's lots of good core data books.
I mean,
Donnie Walls is the one I'm thinking of.
Oh wait, do I know that one?
That's the one we were reading early on. But there's lots of good core data books, like really good ones that explain this stuff. So books are great. You just have to kind of find out what the really good ones are, and then figure out how to read them properly.
I think the thing that strikes me is like I tend to have like they're good, particularly for like reference, like it's easy to go back and reference to, because like a lot of times there'll be moments where there'll be like, I think it took me a while to get a grasp of protocol-oriented programming back then, when that was like a big thing that Apple was like, hey, this is something to look out for. And it's like, I don't get how this is any better or worse. And so it took me some time, but when you read the book about it, you kind of like got
what's the book? Do you remember what the name of the book was? There's a book just about protocol-oriented programming?
No, I think there was either it was Apple or Ray Winderlich that was like that had a large like multi-chaptered book-ish thing.
Books books cost money sometimes. Often. So that's one thing that holds you back from people. But there's lots of free resources, as you said. Ray Winderlich is one good spot.
which is why I went to Borders and just
you can do that.
Did the horrible thing of reading all the books.
As you said, you use it for reference. Now, if you
if
you learn how to read a book, especially a technical book, and extract the useful bits that are of interest to you, then you don't need to keep going back to it. So you can even apply that in a situation like you're going to a library and getting a book. I'm not going to say go to the bookstore and treat it like a library, but we all did that back then in the day.
Go to your local library. It's a better idea.
You might have trouble finding a local library, but so you find the book, you read it. If you understand how to what you're looking for, take down proper notes, and then store them in a system so you can actually refer to them later. That could be really useful, especially at first. Because the one thing I find reading books is you don't really learn everything by just reading it. There's too many details to absorb the first time you go through it. But you don't necessarily want to read the same technical book more than once. I mean, sometimes they're classics, but oftentimes, they're pretty dry. So you got to learn the skill of picking out what's important and writing it down and then practicing it. Because I think the number one thing to do to learn anything is to eventually get to the point where you're trying to implement it, solve a problem. Most programmers in their jobs, I think, will agree when I say this, that you learn things because you have to. Like there's a problem and you're like, I don't exactly know the best way of solving this. And now I have to do research and I have to do experimentation and I got to figure it out as I go.
I mean, one thing that I've enjoyed about my contract life was you had to always be learning something. You always took on different projects and they were very different from each other. And so you had to learn different frameworks, different different architectures. You're walking into like a different code base, maybe. You're updating old code to do a new pattern. You're doing all sorts of different types of techniques. Maybe you're doing like the combined. You're adding a shader effect on something that maybe doesn't need a shader effect, but that's what they want. It's just you never know. So like yes, I think one of the things that I always found interesting is like somewhere in one of these books, a lot of times there's a chapter where it's specifically something around my need. Back then, nowadays I'll just go to YouTube or find an article.
I was gonna say I find myself doing videos a lot now. I find like specific channels, like our friend Azam. Azam Sharp on YouTube. Azam. Yep, shout out. And also another great one I found. I'll put in the show notes is Engineering with UTSAV. I think is how you pronounce it. UTSAV. That one has really good like career advice and book recommendations on topics. Okay. I've been getting I have a whole stack of books that I'm reading based on his recommendations. So, and then there's some of the classic other iOS ones like CavSoft and iOS Academy come up a lot.
Oh,
and
then he's got the weird face thumbnails. So he's got his YouTube game on.
Yeah, exactly. And then don't forget the WWDC videos. They are exceptionally useful, and often they are like the only developer app. They are sometimes the only place where Apple sufficiently will document something or like document a design philosophy they might have. Like the one that comes to mind, I think, is about how to deal your model layer in SwiftUI. I think they've updated documentation maybe since the video originally came out, but there's like a video about, I think, data access.
Oh, Data Central? Is that the one?
Data in SwiftUI. I don't remember what it's called. But the whole thing about it is they talk about the big idea in SwiftUI is your model talks directly to your view, like your view and your model are connected, and you have like like one giant model or an aggregate, or you have like little pieces of models that you expose through the different mechanisms, like through the like a fetch request wrapper or something, and that use bindings to your actual models. And like that's like their big. They kept doing this, and they say we have this observed object wrapper, and like so the whole thing was about trying to get that through your head. that's how you should do it, and not necessarily the way you would do it in other frameworks that don't have the binding support, where you'd have to go through an intermediary object like a view model.
Yeah.
And it's like I watched that, I was like, oh, now I kind of get. Now implementing that is a different story. That's not always straightforward or how to figure that out. But in the concept is made pretty clear in that video.
Right. I mean, one of the other ones that I thought I get a lot of inspiration from. I think originally I leaned on Design Code for this, but like Kavsoft, KAV Soft, has a YouTube channel and a Patreon, which is actually reasonably priced, at like $5 to $15.
He has some great example apps. Kavsoft.
Brilliant business model, by the way. Just be like, here is a YouTube video. I'm going to share how I did it in the YouTube video, speedrun style. I'm not going to share the code. The code is behind the Patreon wall. So
and it's like, here's a video to solve your problem. He always has like a video that's like, whatever problem I have, there's a video for it. From
I swear, I literally go, oh man, wouldn't it be great if we had this thing?
Yeah, and then
this pill with this horizontal row of pill buttons that have like that like changes the highlight animation and animates that, and it's like, here you go, I got something for you. I'm like, oh, Kavsoft, you are my drug dealer now.
Yeah, indeed. And
don't do drugs, kids.
Don't. You already mentioned like mentorship, like you talking in person with developers, coming to Philly Coca events. Coding, it's just, as I said, side projects, contracting work gives you that kind of experience where you have to apply the things you learned. Yeah. That's a big thing. One thing recently I've discovered, was there's just some really useful apps that help you. Like what's that Fabula app or the Interactful app? Like these apps have these examples of how to do things in Swift UI, not just like the controls, but like animations and stuff. Very amazing. And because it's interactive, you can go in there and play around with it and actually see how it works. And they give you the code snippet, and you can mess with it.
And it's not that and the code snippets are not that complicated. Like
I mean,
There's also one called Interactful.
Interactful, I have that one.
Yeah, that one is kind of like a very more like vanilla. It just tells you, it gives you like a basic, it shows you all the controls and all the views and all the sort of basic components of Swift UI, and then gives you like a basic example, and then maybe some interaction and some code that doesn't quite update itself correctly.
I like
any changes, but it's pretty decent.
Library I just discovered for that kind of thing. I think it has an excellent layout of here's all the controls and views for Swift UI. Really easy to find something. Here's a simple example of it. I use that to help just get like a snippet for something. Like I was like looking up pickers. I was like, how do I do a picker? And I was like, click, this is what I want, and here's my code. Perfect. Saved me a lot of time looking at the documentation.
There is, I mean, nowadays you're looking at, there is Companion for Swift UI, which is $50, but then there's like Detail Pro, which is Design Tool for Swift UI.
Oh wow.
I thought I saw another one like that. Judo. Design and build. I've actually played with that a little bit. Judo is like, imagine Sketch.
You're just gonna make me spend 20 minutes getting all these links.
Imagine Sketch or Figma. So you build these UIs and then you wire them together, and then you can export out an Xcode project. Of that. Now it won't do the fancy interactions, but that's not the point. The point is your designer now has a way to construct a general layout and a general like prototype, basically, to then allow prototypers to then help like finish the job, basically, refine it and get it to a point where then you could just quickly take it to your stakeholders. Everyone's happy, easy peasy.
So Aaron hasn't spoken up here. Do you have any particular ways you like to learn that maybe we haven't even talked about?
No, I think you covered most of them. Like when I started, it was like books really early when I didn't like know a whole lot, and then went into videos and articles and stuff like that. So I think you covered most of the things.
So you do the same kind of thing that we're talking about. Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty common, a common approach. But I think everybody has their own kind of mix of it that works best for them. Some people really like watching videos. Other people really like to read books. I think I tend to, as I said, do a lot of videos, but I also like to read a lot of like software engineering, computer science, more classic kinds of books that maybe some of them were written more than a decade ago, but I think they're valuable because they're giving you the concepts that are implemented in different frameworks.
I remember one of the things, like when I was doing a lot of game jam games, a lot of these hackathons or a lot of these game jams, I didn't realize this at the time when I was doing it, because like those were the only times I was ever messing with Unity. which is a game engine that is very popular, particularly for mobile development. If you're going to make mobile games, but it's very much, and indie games, it's very much used in that space these days. Like you would probably only use a game engine like Unreal if you're like very dedicated to building like a AAA style game.
Yeah.
Everything else can be Unity, basically. The funny thing is, I got like over time, because I think I participated in like about 50-ish game jams in some form of capacity. But every iteration, I just it became a lot less intimidating, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And certainly I got better at getting around the development environment for that. I think the same way is with Objective-C, or I think when I first started iOS development in general, I can't imagine how intimidating that must be now for young developers. But like,
it was still pretty intimidating back in the day. I remember
terribly intimidating.
I got into it because I was told, well, we want to make a mobile app, and you're the Apple guy, so you do it for the Apple platform, and like it needs to do all this stuff, and so I was dropped to the deep end.
Can you imagine what, like, back then, how much struggle it was just to get your brain wrapped around view controllers with all its
because the thing is
pre-templated functions, and
Apple,
like what is the difference between a view did load and a view will appear and view did appear?
Apple's
when to use what
Apple's interpretation of MVC is it's like kind of its own flavor. So that's one thing, and then it has all these patterns it uses, which you rarely see. I don't really like. For instance, delegates, I actually like that pattern in UIKit. But how often do you see that elsewhere? I'm sure you do, but I don't generally see that elsewhere, like that pattern. And you don't really see it anymore as much in the native Swift APIs, right? It's kind of like gone by the wayside a bit for other patterns. So there was like stuff like that in there back in the day that were new to me, and I was like, what is this? And I remember Delegate was one of the ones, like trying to figure that out. And you're using old Objective-C before we had Arc. And you have all the memory issues. You think, and everything's pointers. And you had to manually dealloc stuff. It was painful.
Or no, was it retain and
release?
And,
you had to count everything yourself. And
brackets and brackets and brackets and brackets.
Yeah, the first time I looked at Objective-C code, I was like, okay, look, it wasn't as surprising to me as maybe other people because I used to look at Lisp code, for like Emacs Lisp, but it was like that. It was like just this screen full of brackets, and there's some code snippets in the middle of them somewhere. You just have to adjust your eyes.
I can't imagine when sometimes I look at projects with like a mix of Swift and Objective-C. And I think it's like, oh, the junior developers are gonna freak out when they see this objective. It's like, how do I even interpret this? I think the toughest part of getting back to sort of learning it was having a project. I think committing, not the toughest part, but like the way I learned it was to have projects that were very small in scope, side projects basically, and then kind of build every iteratively get better. The same with the game jam stuff. I just iteratively got better, very Kaizen, if you will. And the thing is, like, for me, I get that I'm a very slow developer in the sense of like learning, and a lot of it's just bad habits, 100%. A lot of it can be just the way I treat. I come from like a very artist kind of perspective, and in a way, it's almost like a very comic book artist perspective. Because that's what I grew up loving to do. I used to love drawing comic books all the time. Really crappy, really just, zine style comics. And I just remember thinking like, oh, this is basically how I approach programming. It's just like everything I build is like, I don't care once it's done, or once it's like, once it's like, it's a perfection at that moment. It's like, this is a deadline. This is what I need to get done. And I'm done. I can go back to it if I need to, but like my goal is to just get it done. Like comic book artists, they have American comic artists, they have like literally maybe like 2 weeks, approximately 2 weeks, to turn around a comic to get it ready for publishing. Like very little time. And if we talk about manga, that's like less than a week.
Yeah, I know.
Produce.
Isn't manga like? Don't you have to like go back in time to somehow have your younger self help you to get those things done on time?
Yeah, because literally, like, I mean, in their case, like they do like black and white comics, so you're thinking, okay,
yeah, but
it's
about, super like, sometimes super detailed, like
but that's the thing, right? Like, yeah, exactly.
And because they don't have the color as a means of expression, so they have to use other techniques, which I feel like might be even more work.
Yeah, the point, because they use zipper tone, or they use stuff that is like requires a ton of precision, because you have to cut out the zipper tone and the right type of zipper tone, and you just put it in the right place to like create these patterns that maybe you wouldn't be able to do. Dragon Ball was very smart about not having to rely on those as much, but like,
I never read I never read the manga for that for so long. I don't remember it. I think they kept it pretty simple.
If you watch that manga, you learn that they learn how to take shortcuts, and they learn through experience how to like to focus on the things that matter. So like if you look at like manga, I don't know why we're going off this tangent, but
because it wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't.
You notice, like, and even comics in general, you notice that they do a lot of like headshots or like very stationary shots of like people talking, and maybe they do this dramatic pose and here or there, but like most of the time it's like mid shot, headshot, like close eye shots, and then you have like a money shot of like him doing this or that, and like maybe you have like one scene, like a couple of like pages of like action sequences.
Yeah, then your mind fills in the blanks between those.
Right. But those are the cheats.
Or
those are the cheats that
if you do the anime version of like the old school Dragon Ball Z, where you just have, at least the American cut, multiple episodes of just it's like a still frame going to eat up time. I had a psych professor who said this. It was like in a psych class, and he was like, my kids are watching the show. Like Dragon Ball Z, and he's like, I don't understand it. The characters just go like for like an entire episode, and I laughed.
and on top of that, like in between that, they get that once they have like a mini skirmish, right, where they have like an animation of like 2 or 3 frames of them going,
and then it's just all blurred,
punching at each other. Just like blurred still punching for like a split second,
and yet it still works.
They break off. And it's like, still, I see you improved your skills. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, and they have more dialogue. Old school comics anime. I was in the anime club, so I remember the animes. But I was never as much into manga. But back then, it wasn't as easy to get either. Now it's dominant everywhere. Like, shelves and shelves of it.
Like, I mean, thankfully,
golden age of accessing manga.
Yeah, that is true. I was like, do they even know what's in this stuff?
Should make a manga of how to learn
kids
programming.
Yeah.
So okay, I think we have to. I would say I think we have to wrap it up. So like some final words on this so we can do our announcement, because we're already going over time. So some final words on how to learn. We talked about a bunch of resources and kind of techniques in a somewhat haphazard fashion, as is our style here on the podcast. I will be putting a bunch of links in here. I'm going to spend like an entire Sunday or something just getting the links together, and that way you can find them for yourself. No. But do you have any like kind of last words? Because I think it's a topic we can definitely revisit in the future as well.
Sure. I mean, learning is a kind of an individual process, and not everyone learns the same way. I personally feel over time, like some people do better with mentorship. Some people do better with just reading and just applying what they and slowly building. Some people do better with repetition, and some people just do better, myself basically, of just banging their head against the wall, focusing and isolating themselves in a corner, and just being strapped on the chair to finish the job. And I've done stuff like that in the past, where I've actually spent over a weekend overnight at work. Don't do that, because I couldn't do it any other way. I couldn't deal with the distractions any other way. So don't do that. But come up with a better way. But that being said, that's my general feeling about learning is like find what works for you in the construct that fits your rhythm.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna say there's so much I can talk about this, but I think one skill that has really helped me, and I think it would help other people to learn faster, to retain things, that have access to the information that they need when they need it to work on something, is the way of reading and note taking. I think we're not taught how to do this very well. You're taught mostly how to, in school, how to take notes for like cramming and retention for a test or something, and you're not really taught how to build up a collection of knowledge over time. So I don't want to go too much into this because I'm still kind of in the beginning stage of doing this myself. But I think everybody should read the book How to Take Smart Notes. That book has a lot of tangents. It's really about Zettelkasten, I'm probably mispronouncing it, way of taking notes. And it can be a frustrating book to read if you just want to know how that works. There's actually a lot of places you can get like a quick summary of the actual process, which is not that complicated. But what I liked about that book is it has lots of little asides in there about ways that you're taught to literally take notes. It focuses on academic writing, but I think it's applicable more generally. And there's a lot of ways you learn that aren't very helpful. But one of the things it emphasizes that you learn by writing. Like writing is the thing you're doing. And if you're an academic, you're always researching. Like the thing you do is research and write. And the process of like reading a book, taking appropriate kinds of notes at that point, and then translating them into your own words, into your own knowledge system, as part of this process, that it's not just like the tools we have, it's not just the source of information, it's the workflow and the process we use to actually consume that stuff and turn it into knowledge, and then even turn it into a like database of like reference knowledge, or that you can turn to later when you're looking for ideas for things. But I think that's actually very important. If you get nothing else out of it, it's just like you need to have a proper process, like a workflow to consume this stuff. I think the thing that's worked the least for me is just reading a book and not engaging with it. You engage with the book by writing down notes in your own words, like as you're thinking about stuff that comes up, and you read and you engage with it by applying the stuff you learn in like a code sample or something somewhere else. Like you need some kind of application, some engagement with the materials you're reading, or videos. I've done it, or articles, and I think that will help really boost your learning ability. It's really helped me, and I am not an expert in applying these techniques. I'm still kind of an early student, but even the little bit I've been doing for like a month has been helping me to learn a lot, like learn faster and retain more. And I'm applying it at work to help organize my work life, and it's great. And I could do a whole podcast about the tools and the methodology and stuff, and maybe I'll do that sometime. But that's it. I would just say that apply this. As you said, you need to like take what you're learning and apply it in some way to really engage with it and integrate it into your overall, knowledge base. So there you go. Very abstract, but I like to be a little more philosophical sometimes.
Anything from you, Aaron, or?
Just I guess for me, if we're talking specifically programming, it's like the more like times I feel like start a new language, it gets easier. But it's like, oh man, maybe the first one is difficult, but you start to see the similar concepts in other languages, and so like don't be afraid to like pick up a new language, because you get to kind of use all the stuff you learned from the previous ones, and it can be really fun.
That's a good point. I remember Mike always recommending that idea. Like, I think for him, shout out to you, Mike Zornek.
Mike Zornek, he tries to learn like at least a language a year.
A year, right?
I think it is.
Right. That's a good habit.
I gotta get more.
I aspire to that.
Yeah, we all aspire to be Mike Zornek, but we can't all reach that greatness.
He is the eternal student of the game.
Yeah,
if you will.
You should really check out his website. I'll put a link his website to Mike's blog, Mike's website.
Yes.
He has some great stuff in there about how he learns, stuff he's read, thoughts he's had, even goes as far as to what I like about Mike. I know we're going on another tangent, but one of the things I really like about Mike is that he has like a set of values that he puts out there in the world about around his professional work and engagements. And I think that's a really good habit, to think about what your actual values are and to write them down and to publish them. It's something I'm thinking about lately, about what are my values and how do I actually, turn that into something I want to put on a website. So shout out to Mike. Learned so many great things from Mike over the years.
Yes,
he listens to this podcast, so.
Well, we're just catering. So we're just catering to an audience of one.
It's just embarrassing Mike on his walk right now.
Indeed, we know you're listening, Mike. But getting back on point, we do have an announcement.
Oh right, yes.
Have a point.
This is the big announcement. If you stuck with us this long, here's your reward. Besides all of what you just learned from us,
which may or not be an award, but Philly Cocoa. And so Philly Cocoa and Google Developer Group, Philly, so GDG for short, are doing a joint meetup event on March 22nd, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Comcast Technology Center, Lift Labs, sponsored by Comcast Labs and Comcast Lift Labs. Try saying that 3 times.
That's a long name.
Don't say it. That's a long name. It is going to be our first physical meetup in, I don't know how long, but
if we don't count the times we did a side project. But it's
exactly.
Our first official, our official.
First official. This is kind of like dipping our toes back into the physical space. We finally have a place that will sponsor us for nothing in that sense. Not nothing, but we'll cover the cost in that. But the space is beautiful, and we are going to have 5 lightning talks around around modern mobile around modern mobile development and design. So think of it in constructs of like what modern mobile UI UX patterns we can expect. Maybe talk about technologies like cross-platform development with Flutter as an example. What's new in Kotlin, Jetpack Compose, maybe a wild card somewhere, maybe either game related or web related. We're still working on things out. I really want to get something like accessibility in there if I can. But if you have an idea of a topic you would like to talk to, 10 minutes give yourself 5 minutes for Q&A.
So really short then. Like 5-minute presentation is it's like a YouTube show.
Yeah,
it's a 10-minute presentation with 5-minute presentation and like 5-minute Q&A.
This is perfect for like the TikTok generation. I mean,
no, I'm telling you, it's like I was gonna say it's like a YouTube short, but I guess they copied it from TikTok. So
yeah. That speaks to our age. But so again, March 22nd.
I'll put a link to the meetup.
To the meetup. Yep. Make sure if you're going to do that, make sure to RSVP. If you're going to show up physically, be sure to RSVP in the meetup link. Otherwise, we will be trying to have, I should phrase, a way to watch it live through either Zoom or Teams, depending on which is acceptable to the tech at the building. So, more details to come. You can just follow us at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find the links to our Slack group, our meetup group. If you're feeling generous, though, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is. And share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing. A web developer walks into a restaurant. He immediately leaves in disgust. Why?
I don't know.
The restaurant was laid out in tables.
Oh my God. That is such an old... Will the audience even get it?
Such an old web. All right, fine. Here's another one.
We used to think that was cool to lay out things at tables.
That's true. There are 3 kinds of lies according to the programmers. Lies, damn lies, and benchmarks.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, one more.
Indeed. One more. We gotta do these in threes.
One more. What are the three most dangerous things in the world? 1, a programmer with a soldering iron. 2, a hardware engineer with a software patch.
Whoa.
3, a user with an idea.
Number 3. That's right.
Till next time, good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always. Brackets and brackets and brackets and brackets.